We interrupt this program to show you something really special. Okay, I'll be there. Yeah, right. Number 7. Yeah, to win. And then, and now, back to your regularly scheduled program.
Okay, let's start off with a very sneaky change that the NIV translators made to a verse in Jeremiah. But I want to lay a little groundwork first. By the 15th chapter of Exodus, the Israelites have escaped the Egyptians, and they're free and they're on their way to the promised land. And so once we get beyond the 15th chapter, we can see that God instructs the Israelites on burnt offerings and sacrifices. And this instruction appears in many, many verses in Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Genesis, of course, but we're not concerned about anything except after the 15th chapter of Exodus, because we want to concern ourselves with God's instruction on burnt offerings and sacrifices after the Israelites got out of Egypt. So here we see in chapter 20, God instructing the Israelites about making an altar on which they could burn their offerings and sacrifices. Verse 24, an altar of earth you shall make for me, that would be God, and you shall sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I record my name, I will come to you, and I will bless you. And on it goes. And there's more verses we could find if we just search for burnt offering, singular instead of plural. But God is basically instructing these people to offer burnt offerings, and not only that, but how to offer them. If we went to, I think it's Exodus chapter 29. Let me fast forward to that chapter and just see. Yeah, this is where basically God's laying out the priests and what they wear and how the temple's built and, how the priests are to perform, what they do. And so in here, God also lays out the laws about sacrifice. Okay, basically this whole section, I'll just skip all the bloody and gory instructions on how to slice the bull open and remove its guts. But anyway, verse 13 of chapter 29, near the end, take all that stuff and burn it on the altar. And then they burn the flesh of the bull with its skin as a sin offering, but they burn that outside the camp. That's verse 14. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. Verse 25, you shall receive them back from their hands and burn them on the altar as a burnt offering, as a sweet aroma before the Lord. It is an offering made by fire to the Lord. So the references to God and Moses talking about burnt offerings and just precisely how to do them are really too numerous to even get into here. So there's no question at all that God did instruct his people on burnt offerings and sacrifices when they came out of Egypt. So let's go look at the problem. Jeremiah 7:22. For I did not speak to your fathers or command them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt concerning burnt offerings or sacrifices. We got a problem. This verse directly contradicts countless verses in Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus. So, what do you do with this verse? Well, you could just translate it for what it says. And if we go to the versions, we can see that all the other versions besides the NIV did so. Every last version translates it for the exact same way I just read it. I did not speak to them concerning burnt offerings or sacrifice. King James Version. Didn't speak to them concerning burnt offerings or sacrifice. New King James Version. Now, the NLT translates it differently to try and remove the contradiction. This one's not quite as bad as the NIV. When I led your ancestors out of Egypt, it was not burnt offerings and sacrifices I wanted from them. But it's paraphrasing. It's not translating. And the rest of the translations say the same thing. Young's literal translation. For I did not speak with your fathers, nor did I command them in the day of my bringing them out of the land of Egypt concerning the matters of burnt offering and sacrifice. Well, he most certainly did speak to them about it. In fact, he commanded it, and he said it was a sweet aroma. So, we have a problem. Let's look how the NIV rendered it. For when I brought your forefathers out of Egypt and spoke to them, I did not just give them commands about burnt offerings and sacrifices. What? They insert one little word, and it shifts the whole meaning of the verse. By inserting just, it now doesn't say that he didn't speak to them about it, but that he spoke to them about it as well as other things. And so what we need to do now is see, why did the NIV do this? Did they have a real reason to do that, or is it just to remove the obvious contradiction? None of the other translations do it except for the New Living Translation, which that's a paraphrase anyway. So here are the Hebrew words for Jeremiah 7:22. We can see the Hebrew concordance numbers, and we can see if any of these words carry with it the connotation of just, but where we need it to show up is right here. Concerning, right? I didn't speak to them only about burnt offerings and sacrifice. So if it's going to show up, it's going to show up, right in here. But it might show up here, so we could look at all of them. So you click on the number and you go read it. And you're not going to find it. To speak, okay? We go back, check the second word out, you read the definition. What does that mean? Father of an individual, okay. And you keep repeating, concerning, we go look at that one. So what I'm getting at here is that in none of the words that are actually written on these pieces of parchment and papyrus that are actually in museums, none of these Hebrew words justify inserting the word just like the NIV does. I did not just give them commands about burnt offerings and sacrifices. So here we have the translators inserting a word, just a 4-letter word that completely twists the meaning of the verse. So there you have exhibit number 1. So here's another one that seems, I don't know, you might disagree with this one, but basically in 1 Samuel 13:5, it says the Philistines gathered to fight Israel with 30,000 chariots. Okay, just imagine 30,000 chariots. And remember, the Philistines, we now know, were most likely the Phoenicians. These were a seafaring people. So they're not likely to have 30,000 chariots with 30,000 horses pulling them. So this is just, in my opinion, it's not a scribal error. It's an exaggeration. This is what was really written.